Hey, what's up guys? This is Dan from Fitness Pain Free. I'm the guy that helps coaches and clinicians troubleshoot pain and injury in the gym and get people back in the gym training where they should be, all right? Today we're going over troubleshooting the bench press. It's a multiple part series. So when you have a patient that has shoulder pain in the gym, particularly with bench pressing, I'm gonna show you how to modify that lift so they can continue working towards their fitness goals. And if you choose the right exercise, what's kind of cool is that you're gonna help them be pushed out of pain and get them back in the gym where they wanna be, all right? So the first variable that we're gonna talk about today is modifying load, okay? So when folks have pain in the bench press in the gym, usually what they don't tolerate is heavy weights, okay? So I can't tell you how many times I've had a patient come in and they tell me, you know, bench press hurts, right? But bench press doesn't really hurt until they get above, let's say 80% of their 1 rep max, right? So if they're doing sets of 10 to 15, things end up feeling pretty good. But when we go up to sets of 5 and that load goes higher, 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 oftentimes they have a bit of a challenge and they can't really tolerate that, right? So what I tell my athletes is that, hey, if we blow through this pain, there's a chance that things get better over the course of time. There's also a good chance you can aggravate this further and maybe make the injury worse, right? So I think the smartest thing for your patients is we modify their gym training so the training is very tolerable. And from a pain perspective, I like to have that pain below, let's say a 3 or 4 out of 10. The other thing to keep in mind is that when athletes are using these modifications and they feel pretty good while they're training, we want to make sure that that night and the following day, they don't feel terrible, right? So if you do a bunch of bench press in the gym, it feels great, but the next day you feel god awful, there's a chance that what you did in the gym the day prior was a little bit too much, okay? So the first thing you can do to modify the bench press in the gym when folks are having pain is going to be to change the load by changing the amount of repetitions that you're doing, right? So if you're doing sets of 5, you have to keep the loads pretty high, right? If you're doing sets of 1, obviously it has to be very, very high, okay? But if you're doing sets of 15, then that load is automatically going to drop because your 15 rep max is automatically going to be a little bit lower than your 1 rep max, okay? So let's say you have an athlete and they have a cycle of, let's say the next 4 weeks, they're planning on doing sets of 5, and the following 4 weeks doing sets of 3s, okay? And when you start to assess their shoulder, like this thing is aggravated, I don't think these 5s are gonna be a good idea. What we can do is bump those reps up to 10s, and maybe the following month you're doing sets of 6 to 8s, right? And the other piece is that you can kind of progress athletes as fast as they're tolerating the movements you're throwing at them. It's not like the following month we have to do sets of 8s. You might be back to 3s the following month. You might be feeling pretty dang good, all right? So step 1, your shoulder is hurting in the gym, okay? And you're trying to continue bench press, consider increasing the repetitions, right? So if you're doing sets of 5, try sets of 10 or sets of 15, okay? The second way we can modify load in the gym is going to be by changing the tempo, okay? And this can be either by going a little bit slower on the way down, on the way up, or adding a pause, right? So let's say if your shoulder's hurting you for sets of 10, right, during bench press in the gym, and I say, hey, let's pause each repetition at the bottom of each lift for 1 second, and 1 second at the very top, what automatically happens is that your athlete has to take some weight off the bar. Just because now there's more time under tension, it's more challenging to complete the exercise, so we take a little bit of load off, right? Oftentimes this is great because if someone is load intolerant, they're able to get a nice training effect, right? If you're a powerlifter, you have to train the pause anyway. It allows us to continue working towards our goals, not aggravating the area further, right? And choosing a good movement that's probably gonna help to rehabilitate the shoulder, okay? So tempo, as well as pause reps are really helpful for that, okay? And the last one that's really helpful is to change the rating of perceived exertion, okay? If you've never heard of rating of perceived exertion, or RPE, it's basically how hard you feel like a set is on a scale of 0 to 10, okay? So 10 out of 10 is basically, you got in a car crash, right? And then someone is underneath of the car and you have to pick up that car and you're gonna push as hard as possible, all right? 0 to 10 is like nothing, all right? I think the majority of folks in the gym, their sets are somewhere between, let's say, a 7 and a 9 out of 10, all right? So let's say you're in the gym, your shoulder is hurting, your patient is hurting, and when they get to those 8 or 9 out of 10 sets, the shoulder starts to be aggravated. What I can do is program them to be doing RPE 7 or let's say 8 out of 10. What's kind of cool is that you automatically decrease the load, so someone who has a load intolerant shoulder is going to feel a little bit better, right? And if you look at some of the literature we have on training to failure versus getting close to failure, so if they take 2 groups of people that are strength training, this group trains to failure on every set, and this group leaves a few reps in the tank, and they strength test before the research, or the study, excuse me, and then they strength test again at the end of the study. What they find is that the improvements in strength are very similar, okay? So if you have a patient with an irritable shoulder that's really pushing things and going to failure all the time, then you can actually reduce that RPE. Oftentimes you make the movement more tolerable and it feels pretty good, and you're probably still working towards strength and hypertrophy at the same level as pushing to failure, okay? So guys, that was it for this, but it is not the end of your learning. I have another video for you right here. Go ahead and click on that. So if you're a coach or a clinician and you want to troubleshoot pain or injury in the gym, highly recommend you click on that link and continue learning, and I'll see you on the next video.